Friends, one of the lessons we need to learn, and I get this often with Ask Dr. Betters, is I don't think realize that we really do live in a broken world. Our world is broken in many different pieces. There's people who suffer enormous things. It's like if you're in the room with them, you're hurting. Others are experiencing from glory to glory, and you just love being around them. Nobody wants to be around somebody who's in tremendous pain. I know when we lost our 16-year-old son, Mark, a lot of people didn't want to be around us because they didn't know what to say, and they were afraid they would say the wrong things. But the ones I remember the most during those early years of our personal tragic loss were the ones who wanted to sit down and talk to us about Mark. The ones who had memories to share about Mark, things that they remember about Mark. And they weren't afraid to broach the subject. Now, oftentimes it would cause us to cry. And they would then worry that, well, am I making his pain worse? No, not at all. You're engaging me in my pain and in my suffering, which means that you are helping me to bear the sorrow. So we have a question here from someone who puts it this way. They said, my son and his wife, who live in Tennessee, welcomed a baby, Tessa, on May 27th. My husband and I decided to go visit them to see the new baby, taking many precautions during the travel due to the COVID pandemic. When we arrived, I was filled with such joy to finally hold her, as she was now 1 month old. The next morning, my sister, Barbie, texted for prayers as my nephew, Joey, was in the hospital. His heart had stopped and that he was in critical condition. At that point, I was filled with such mixed emotions. I wanted to be happy for my new granddaughter, but I was also torn with such sorrow for my sister and her family. I was so confused and lost. I didn't know how to feel. How does one handle such a situation? Very carefully, but recognizing, first of all, God placed you there for both the joy and the sorrow that you would experience. You don't handle sorrow the same way you handle joy. You don't handle joy the same way you handle sorrow. It takes a different kind of friend to be able to act in both conditions biblically. For the baby being born, that's a celebration. That's a celebration of new life. And you should do whatever you can do not to allow those parents to be robbed of the joy that should be theirs because of the tragedy that was going on at the other end of your life. Nor should you allow the tragedy to affect the ministry you will have to the person who brought forth this new life. But the key here is to remember God put you there for a reason. He entrusted this to you, and He wants you to give it to Him. Minister to both. Minister with grace to both. Give hope to the one who is suffering. Give encouragement to the one who is not suffering. To bless God for the blessings that He's given. The beauty of sorrow and the beauty of joy is that there are two sides of the same coin called life. And it's a broken world in which we live. Christians get cancer just like non-Christians get cancer. Christians suffer terrible car accidents just like non-Christians suffer terrible car accidents. Christians experience the joy of birth, and the sorrow of death. I can't tell you how many babies I have buried over my career, where stillborns, for example. The pain is horrendous. But you have to enter into the pain. You have to put on the surgical gown and go into the operating room with them. That's what people who we remember did for us. They put on the surgical gown and allowed us to lean into the pain, say the things that were on our hearts without condemning us. You know, Job had some friends. Job suffered great suffering. He had some wonderful friends. They spent days with him, just sitting there watching him, being with him. They got into trouble when they opened their mouths, when they stopped ministering to Job and started condemning Job. This is your fault. There's sin in your life. They didn't need to do that. They chose the wrong tact at the wrong time, and Job lost his friends over this. They didn't help one single bit with the tragedy he was going through. I believe when you're placed into contrasting situations like you describe, you're there for a reason. You're there as a ministering angel, a ministering agent for the one who's experiencing great joy. You embrace that, you put your arms around that, you welcome that, but you do it in the same kind of exuberance that you would for somebody who is hurting. Tragedy, loss, disappointment. I remember reading, after we lost our son Mark, every book I could read on grief. Some of them helped me, some of them didn't. Some of the great authors, the great historical figures, didn't help me. I read one book by one professor at a college up in Pennsylvania who lost a son. That book helped me. He spoke my language. He knew what I was going through, and every word in his book touched my heart. I had to call him and tell him that years later, that book blessed my soul more than anything else, because I know it broke his heart to write it. I know it broke his heart to enter into that pain. So friends, I want to encourage you. Maybe comment and ask some further questions on this. Check out the description below for more and follow up on this. I'd like to hear what you have to say about the conflicting messages of joy and peace on one hand, tragedy and sorrow on the other hand. How do you handle both without also realizing they're both going to come to you because we live in a broken world? Hope this helps.
Hi, my name is Melissa Weisenfels, Executive Director here at MARKINC Ministries. Thank you so very much for your continued support of this video series. Ask Dr. Betters is not meant to be a substitute for professional counseling, but instead is designed to extract biblical principles around the questions being asked. We encourage you to seek professional counseling if needed.